You're tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
Welcome back to The Andrew Lawton Show here on True North. As we talk about what life is going to look like after the pandemic, we also have to look at what some of the things on the political agenda were for Canada prior to the lockdown and which of these may come back. And one that I saw a lot of headlines about and a lot of outrage about, and frankly, I hadn't looked into it too deeply because there were other things going on that I was focused on, is a ban from the federal Liberals on conversion therapy. And we know that conversion therapy has a very dark history. People that are forcing or have historically forced those who are gay or have a sexual orientation other than being straight into compliance with being straight if that's not who they are. And it's very terrible that this has happened, but that isn't what's being banned in this legislation. And if you look at the fine print, you see, as the old saying goes, that the devil is in the details. So I want to talk about this with MP Garnett Genuis, who has written a great piece in the Epoch Times about it. Conversion therapy bill could have far-reaching and unexpected consequences. The Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan MP joins me on the line now. Garnett, good to talk to you. Thanks very much for your time.
Great to be here, Andrew, and thank you for the opportunity. Hope you're doing okay under the quarantine conditions here.
Yes, likewise. The bill that is really at stake here, I find to be very interesting. And I mentioned to my listeners earlier, I hadn't really looked too much in depth at it because I think like most Canadians, when they hear conversion therapy, they have a vision in their mind of what that is and they're against it. And you've raised a number of scenarios that I'll get to here. But this isn't actually about conversion therapy, at least insofar as how people define that term in their minds.
Yeah, let's just hit this very clearly off the top so there's no ambiguity, and I and all of your viewers, I'm sure, would agree with this. Conversion therapy is bad, and we're against it, and it's legitimate for the state to take action on it, as long as we are understanding what we mean by conversion therapy when we say that. There's this history around using abuse, violence, degrading treatment to try and compel people to change their sexual orientation. Not only is that ineffective, not only did it not work, but it's contrary to human dignity, to degrading treatment, violence, bullying, in any kinds of context. What I'm concerned about is that this legislation actually uses a definition for conversion therapy, which is so broad as to be at certain points incorrect, and would call conversion therapy things that I think everybody would accept are not conversion therapy. The definition is expansive, such that it includes efforts to reduce a person's sexual attraction or behavior. So if a parent, if a mentor were to say to a 16-year-old or a 14-year-old, maybe you should wait until you're a bit older before you become sexually active, or maybe you should dial back a particular relationship, maybe you should not be behaving in certain contexts at a certain age in a way that as an effort to reduce sexual attraction or behavior could be read into this law as being conversion therapy. The interesting thing is that the communications around the release of the bill, the government said it doesn't include private conversations, it doesn't include all these things they said it doesn't include. In the legislation, the text of the bill itself, not the accompanying communication, but the text of the bill itself, which is what would become law, doesn't contain those exceptions. So we're all against conversion therapy, but there's, I think, a need to understand and amend and fix the definition here. If the definition isn't fixed, it leaves the door wide open for parenting conversations, for casual discussions, as well as legitimate things that parents might say to their children to be perversely read into the definition.
Yeah, and there's actually a petition that you link to in the article, which has, as you just note, fixthedefinition.ca, and we'll put that up on the screen there for people to see it. Fix the definition. So is it just a matter in your mind of wanting this bill clarified and that definition fixed, or is it that you think the bill itself should be scrapped?
Well, I think the definition is the issue. I would be very happy to support legislation which clearly addresses the issue of conversion therapy, as everybody or I think as most people kind of understand the term to be, and as it comes from terrible practices. It's about the definition. It's about the need to fix the definition. This should be an area on which there is consensus. I think there is consensus. Maybe it's just sloppy legislative drafting, and we've seen various cases from this government of sort of trying to rush something out and not doing the legislative drafting right, or maybe it's something more insidious. Maybe it's an effort to use an expansive or incorrect definition to create a political wedge when really there's no need for that. I mean, there's agreement on this, but I think there would also be agreement that that parents should be able to give instruction to their children about sexual behavior, that mentors, that faith organizations can teach things about sexual behavior in a dignity affirming way, and that shouldn't create sort of questions about legality.
Yeah, and I just want to rhyme off very quickly some of the situations you include here, which I think fall outside of the parameters of that stereotypical and historic definition of conversion therapy. You cite a 17-year-old who could be struggling with severe addiction to pornography, and he enters a course of psychological counseling to manage that. So in that case, it would be consensual seeking of treatment. And another one that we're seeing more commonly, especially with a case out in BC, gender affirmation. A grandfather telling a 6-year-old girl who thinks she's a boy, no, you're a girl, there are girls and boys. So these are not even cases of therapies that would be afoul of the law. These are private conversations. And you're saying that when the Liberals have promised those are not included in the bill, they actually are.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say I think the definition is ambiguous, right? And the concern is, I think probably some of these situations would run afoul of the law as it's written, but there's also a chilling effect where if it's ambiguous, am I allowed to say this to my child or not? That creates potential issues when you're trying to have these conversations. And whatever you might think of the choices of parents in some of these situations, I think these raise real issues. The pornography example, right? We know that younger and younger children are being exposed to sometimes very violent pornographic images on the internet, and counseling around what some of the effects of those things may be is an important thing for us to be thinking about. If you have 12 and 13-year-old boys that are seeing violent sexual images and they need to kind of think about sexual attraction and behavior and try to kind of reorganize their thinking around some of those. So obviously, that's very important. You're right to point out as well, Andrew, that the legislation doesn't define this as sort of purely in a therapeutic context, right? It includes any practice, right? I mean, what's a practice, right? It very much could include private conversations, I think, and although the government's communication said it doesn't include private conversations, there's no such exclusion in the legislation itself. So if a group of friends are having a conversation about what they think about transgendered issues, I think whether people might agree or disagree with some of the things that are said in that conversation, I think it's sort of common sense that the state shouldn't be policing the things people might say to each other as friends in casual conversation about their views on gender identity.
And it stands to reason that someone going to, and I'd say especially someone going to some sort of a spiritual leader, a priest, a rabbi, a minister, that would be under the microscope under this.
I think you hear some of the discourse, people promoting this idea that we've got to clamp down on religious organizations supposedly. I do want to be clear, like I don't think there is any religious organization, certainly that I'm no churches, mosques, synagogues that want. I think you'd find general agreement from faith communities as well that conversion therapy, as properly defined, is unacceptable. But yes, of course, in a religious context, there are also conversations about sexuality where people are saying, you should conform your sexual behavior to ways that align with the teachings of your faith. And if people don't like the messages they're receiving, they're of course welcome to seek out spiritual fulfillment in the context of a different faith community that has a different approach to these sexuality issues. But it would seem to be a big overreach if the implication of this is that the state is saying that faith communities can't teach ideas about sexuality that may reflect their teachings but may not be sort of in vogue with the assumptions about sexual behavior in our modern society.
Douglas Murray, who's a great writer and author and a gay man himself, has said that his issue with a lot of these conversion therapy bans that have been proposed elsewhere around the world, not about this one specifically, is that they don't often allow for people that might have a discomfort with something in their own life to seek it, even if it's completely voluntary. And is that your reading of this bill, that if someone, and I'm not talking about a gay person that's trying to turn straight, I think we've all agreed that that's not within the parameters of what anyone in society should be advocating. But, should there be, or is there under the bill as it's written now, something that would allow someone who is personally interested in changing an aspect of their life to seek out a service that does that, or is that gone as well?
Well, there's this as part of the definition, there's this kind of exception afterwards that says it doesn't include people that are exploring aspects of their identity. But there is sort of loaded ambiguity here that raises that question. People that are, and I've in sort of thinking about this issue, I've talked in detail with gay friends of mine, some of whom are involved in faith communities, some of whom are not at all, and they would, I think, all agree that conversion therapy, as it's been historically understood, is deeply problematic, but that there are also issues with this definition, and part of that issue is the liberty of people who are LGBT to have conversations within their own faith communities as they try and explore these aspects of their identity. I think we should be concerned about when people are subject to bullying, degrading treatment. But if people are hearing sort of a range of different points of view about sexuality, about theology, whatever the case may be, view in a way that's in a way that's respectful, that affirms their human dignity. It would be strange for the state to say that they have to somehow protect people from those kinds of conversations.
And of course, right now, the government is focused on anti-coronavirus approaches and policies and all of these other things. So I know this is not front of mind right now, but it will be coming back. And certainly, I think everyone can agree we don't want bills that are deliberately or unintentionally ambiguous. So the website with the petition, fixthedefinition.ca. Just before I let you go, Garnett, I mean, what's your take on the return to Parliament plan that we have now? I know that we've had Skyping in of parliamentarians for the first time in Canadian history. Well, not Skype, but the parliamentary service. Do you think that there is an effective way to get things done through the method that's been proposed and implemented now?
Well, I think we should have more in-person sittings on Parliament Hill. We have one a week, and we're able to do that in a way that's safe and practicing social distancing in the chamber. And there's no public health reason why we couldn't have a few more of those a week, given that, again, we're already doing one a week. And the government's approach to this is quite inconsistent. They allege that, we got to keep people off Parliament Hill because it's not safe. And then they send a whole bunch of ministers to the Hill to do a press conference in terms of the gun ban. It's like it's safe for ministers to come and announce sweeping orders in council, but it's not safe for parliamentarians to come more to ask them questions. So look, we need to do everything we can to ensure that Parliament is working during these challenging times. The government is spending a lot of money. They're making expansive decisions. And I mean, part of the reason why it's important to talk about C8 and fix the definition is the government has shown us with their Order in Council on firearms that they are willing to aggressively advance other aspects of their agenda and try to use the potential lack of scrutiny to do so. So, in addition to all the issues around the money spent in the COVID-19 response, there's a question about advancing other aspects of their agenda. Andrew, nobody thinks that we should have 338 MPs in the chamber at once, shoulder to shoulder. There's no one proposing sort of a pure business as usual. We can find adaptations, and we found them already. The digital sitting, so-called, I don't think you could have a real virtual parliament that would actually respect the rights and privileges of members. What we have right now is a little bit of a workaround where it's a special COVID-19 committee. It does some of the things that would normally happen in the chamber, but it is formally a parliamentary committee, which means that there aren't some of the same limitations and requirements. And still there's technical problems with that. So let's use the chamber more in person. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I've seen how many ministers of the Crown haven't actually been able to unmute in TV interviews, so I wasn't optimistic in the virtual parliament going off without a hitch just based on user error. So I appreciate that answer and appreciate your time today. Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, MP Garnett Genuis joining me on the line. Thanks so much, Garnett. Good to talk to you as always.
Thank you. Great to talk to you and your viewers as well.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.